Recording in three, two, and one. What music are we listening to again today?
We got both kinds. We got country and western. Again.
Welcome to episode 242 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 242. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups, the down, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. I am ready to go if you want to kick us off on the nerdery side of the house.
Okay, so this is the second list of country and western. I did have a bit of a soapbox in the last episode. I may pull that bad boy out again. But I want to talk about certain refrains. Things like "Hear that lonesome whippoorwill. He sounds too blue to fly. The midnight train is whining low. I'm so lonesome I could cry." And I might get a little southern on this one. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. So we're talking about country western music again. And again, it's been said several times, man, why do you hate country western music so much? And the simple answer is I don't. I just don't like a lot of the stuff coming out of Nashville. I don't like a lot of stuff coming out of the pop stations either. This is not that uncommon. We discussed in the last time there was this roper subculture that ran through Texas, and I'm assuming other parts of the country as well, the Midwest. That was inauthentic, and it drove me crazy as as a as a boy and a teen and well into my 20s, because again, it's the inauthenticity of it. So let's kind of dive into authenticity. The first song on our list is "I'm a Long Way from Home" by Shooter Jennings. Waylon Albright Shooter Jennings is an American musician and record producer. He's the son of country singers Waylon Jennings and Jesse Coulter. In a career spanning 3 decades, Jennings has explored a variety of musical genres. Jennings made his debut with the single "4th of July" on his 2005 album, put the O back in country on Universal South. Uh, I believe that is actually a cover of the band X's "4th of July." It peaked at number 22 on Billboard country charts. Jennings has since followed with 7 full-length studio albums: Electric Rodeo, The Wolf, Black Ribbons, Family Man, The Other Life, and Countach for Giorgio in 2016 and Shooter in 2018. In addition to a live album and a compilation and numerous EPs. But this song, "I'm a Long Way from Home," is on the Walk the Line soundtrack, which is about Johnny Cash, which is a dude he grew up around. Um, and he got to work with a lot of the people that he grew up with, i.e., the Carters and the Cash family. Particularly on this song, "I'm a Long Way from Home" is God, how do I put it? It's got an old country sound. It's kind of anthemic, but it's also about the longing. Because a lot of the Western genre is cowboy songs, and cowboy songs are the way the cowboys worked is they would spend 3 or 4 months away from home driving cattle, and that's how they made their living. They weren't the ranchers, they weren't the guys that owned the cattle, they were just the guys that moved them from place to place. Um, and that's kind of this song kind of harkens back to that. They would write these songs while out on the range, moving cattle from one place to another. It was cold, it was hot, it was dangerous. Um, and at the end of the road, the town that you went to, you blew off a little steam, and sometimes you could get mugged, stabbed, or shot. Including my hometown of Fort Worth, Texas, was one of the stops on that particular trail. Um, so it's a lament, and that's what this is. What did you think about "I'm a Long Way from Home" by Shooter?
It's not a bad song. It's just not one for me. It's not a particularly sound that I like when I listen to country music, but it's not a bad song at all. I could definitely see the appeal with this one. Um, there's some good stuff in here. It's just not one that I would listen to over and over.
That's fair. Yeah, some of the stuff is not, again, it's not for everybody. Um, I like this one. There's a couple of Shooter songs that I'm really a fan of. He got a little
Hmm.
more rocky later on in his career. This one's kind of
Yeah.
early. Um, Shooter was also in I Walk the Line playing his father because he looks like him, especially when he was young.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, yeah, I'd completely forgotten he was in that.
Mhm. He's a lot like Gibby Haynes. The older he gets, the more he looks like his dad.
Hmm.
Um, I, Shooter's just one of those guys. He's been around this his whole life, so it's kind of it's kind of part of his DNA. Both his parents were very successful musicians in the outlaw country scene of the 70s in and around Austin. Um, Maybe we should talk about that a little bit. So you had the Nashville sound that started with guys like Hank Williams and of course, the Carters up in Appalachia, which ended up recording a lot in Nashville and became, you know, they did all these big country hay rides that ran all the way up until the 50s. And then Nashville kind of got commercialized in the 50s. So a lot of these people in the 60s and 70s moved to different parts of the country, like Memphis or Austin, and started their own little scenes there, which kind of revolutionized country western for a little while. And then it got corporatized again, mostly because of that roper subculture, which lends a lot to inauthenticity, which is why I don't like a lot of that stuff. And again, that's on me. It's because it bothers me that in some cases I will never like this, even if it's not that bad, because it reeks of hoserishness, and it's probably because of the way I grew up. Um, but this the stuff that we are talking about is very authentic. The next song is from that country hayride period of the 1930s and 40s and into the early 50s. It is I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry by Hank Williams. Hiram Hank Williams, he was born in 1923 and he died in 1953. I don't even think he was, I don't think he was 30 yet. I think he was like 29 when he died. He was an American singer, songwriter, and musician, an early pioneer of country music. He is regarded as one of the most significant and influential musicians of the 20th century. Williams recorded 55 singles that reached the top 100 on the Billboard Country and Western bestsellers charts, five of which were released posthumously and 12 of which reached number one. Old Hank was raised in Alabama. Williams learned guitar from African American blues musician Rufus Payne. Both Payne and Roy Acuff significantly influenced his musical style. After winning an amateur talent contest, Williams began his professional career in Montgomery in the late 30s, playing on local radio stations and at area venues such as schoolhouses, movie theaters, and bars. He formed the Drifting Cowboys backup band, which was managed by his mother, and dropped out of school to devote his time to his career. Because his alcoholism made him unreliable, he was fired and rehired several times by radio station WSFA and had trouble replacing several of his band members who were drafted during World War II. In 1944, Williams married Audrey Shepard, who competed with his mother to control his career. After recording Never Again and Honky Tonkin' with Sterling Records, he signed a contract with MGM Records. He released a hit single, Move It On Over, in 1947 and joined the Louisiana Hayride radio program. The next year, he released a cover of Lovesick Blues, which quickly reached number one on Billboard's top country western singles charts and propelled him to the stardom of the Grand Ole Opry. Although unable to read or notate music to any significant degree, he wrote such iconic hits as Your Cheating Heart, Hey Good Looking, and I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. During his final years, he struggled with back pain and substance abuse, exacerbated by his relationship with Audrey and the Grand Ole Opry. Williams died on New Year's Day, 1953, at the age of 29, his heart failing in the backseat of a car near Oak Hill, West Virginia, en route to a concert in Canton, Ohio. Despite his relatively brief career, he is one of the most notably celebrated and influential musicians of the 20th century, especially in country music. Moanin' the Blues is the second and last studio album by American country musician Hank Williams, released on MGM Records in 1952. It was released late in 1952. He died real shortly after that. So Hank Williams, I believe it was tuberculosis, but I may be wrong. He had a lot of childhood illnesses, which is why he was 4F and didn't get drafted in the Second World War. But he tried to control it with the pain with prescription drugs, which he could get just by going to a doctor and going, "Hey, my head hurts or my back hurts." They give him these prescription drugs, and he chase them with whiskey in the backseat of a car. That is what eventually killed him. But the fact that he was already unhealthy didn't help, which is probably why he didn't make it past 29 years old. Um, his effect on the country western genre of music was substantial, even though he only released two albums. And honestly, he was way more well known after he died than before. Um, there were a lot of imitators. Um, oh my God, what's his name? Jack Tripper. Um, the actor, Jack Tripper.
Um, uh, my God.
Exactly.
Um, uh, uh,
Eh,
hold on.
Thank
Hold
you.
on. I got it. Why?
His father, whose
This
name was
is
Tex,
this
and
is
his
so
last name.
this is so stupid.
I know.
Um,
Yeah,
John Ritter.
yeah. Tex
Crap.
Ritter, his father, Tex Ritter, was well, a lot of people say he was a copy of Hank Williams, but he basically just took that sound and kept moving it, as well as Lefty Frizzell and some of these other guys who just, toured around the country. Johnny High, who was from Arlington, Texas, who's still got a big country western showcase in Arlington. You can go see right now. Uh, there's a big country western review that they do, and I think they do it once a month. Um, but a lot of these guys basically, I don't want to say rode on Hank Williams' coattails, because they were grifting, or not grifting, they were grinding it out too at the same time. But because of his popularity, their stuff, which was of a very similar genre, exploded onto the public, and all over the South and the Midwest, and even the East Coast and the West Coast. They were listening to this music, and it exploded for a period of about 10 years, from the late 40s up to the late 50s, being replaced by, rock and roll, which has a very heavily is very heavily influenced by this music and what was known as jump blues, or party music, in juke joints. So you get jump blues, which has a lot of the electrified stuff, and then you get the country western genre. The country western genre was also heavily influenced itself by Hawaiian electric guitar music. So the stand-up steel guitar was really popular in Hawaiian music, um, in the 30s. That had a big effect on this, as well as Swiss yodeling. So a lot of these guys would do yodeling in the middle of their shows. And then, that leads to the Roy Rogers and the Dale Evans, the singing cowboys, which were basically singing these songs when they were making these movies. Um, So it was just a whole big thing, and it lasted for about 10 years till rock and roll came along, and then it kind of became this commercial thing, but mostly because of songs like I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, which in my mind is indicative of that period and that sound. What do you think about I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, Jeffrey?
Sorry, ask me again. I was in the middle of a song.
What do you think about I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry?
Sorry. Hank Williams was very, very good. And you're absolutely correct. Hank Williams influenced a lot of people. There are a lot of people that came in on his coattails. You 100% correct. All your points are very good on there. this is just an era of country music that's not real fond for me. That old country music. I prefer when you get more into the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s for me. This is just a genre where it's just not in my wheelhouse of what I like. I appreciate Hank Williams for what he did for country, and I appreciate the fact that he has done some very, very good songs. I'm just not a personal fan of this one. Not saying it's a bad song at all. 100% you should hear Hank Williams because
Yeah,
you should really hear where country really, really began.
yeah, yeah,
Granted, it began before this, but
yeah.
Hank Williams really brought it into the forefront.
Yes, yes, he did.
Um, so like I said, don't get me wrong. I think it's a great song. For him, I think it's really appropriate that it's in this list, just not a song for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, the yodeling and stuff kind of throws me off too.
Yeah,
That's why I'm not crazy about the yodeling stuff. I do like the lap steel guitar. I think it's great. Although I kind of prefer non-electric steel guitar because I think it sounds really good, and
agreed.
you don't hear it enough,
Right.
especially in modern music, because you still have to mic it. But what it was is they would take these guitars and they put a steel pan in the bottom of them, and it would work as an amplifying device, um, which is where the Hawaiian music got it from, and they just electrified it, which is then where we get electric guitars from. So I mean, it's a nice progression, but it's okay. But I'd rather hear it on the steel. And what's great about this one is you get this recording, you get more of that old fashioned sound. Um,
And you bring up a great point that I want people to understand that may not be very familiar with country at all. Um, Understand if you like modern rock and modern rock and roll, if you didn't have the people that took this country sound and brought the blues sound in with it, you wouldn't have what you have now for rock and roll.
yeah,
It
yeah,
it 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 took a really it took a lot of combination of those two genres to bring out what we later knew as rock and roll and what
oh
we know
yeah.
as rock now. Without these beginnings, we wouldn't have it.
There's a reason why Ray Charles later in his career wanted to record country songs as well as Chuck Berry and Little Richard. It's
Mm-hmm.
because they took these two sounds, that again, the jump blues, which eventually we will do roots rock or jump blues, because it's not rock and roll, but it's close, but it's missing something. This is what it's missing.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's amazing. All right, the next song in our list is "Love Has No Pride" by Bonnie Raitt. Bonnie Raitt is an American singer, guitarist, and songwriter. In 1971, Raitt released her self-titled debut album. Following this, she released a series of critically acclaimed roots-influenced albums that incorporated elements of blues, rock, folk, and country. She was also a frequent session player and collaborated with other artists, including Warren Zevon, Little Feat, Jackson Browne, the Pointer Sisters, John Prine, and Leon Russell. In 1989, after several years of limited commercial success, she had a major hit with her 10th studio album, Nick of Time, which included the song Nick of Time. The album reached number one on Billboard 200 chart and won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. It has since been selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the United States. Her following two albums, Luck of the Draw and Longing in the Hearts, were multi-million sellers, generating several hit singles, including Something to Talk About, Love Sneaking Up on You, and the ballad I Can't Make You Love Me. However, this particular tune is off her second album, Give It Up, which was basically roots rock and a country album. Um, Released in 1972 on Warner Brothers Records. Give It Up is an amalgamation of various genres. This song is a country song. It is a lament. It is Love Has No Pride by Bonnie Raitt. Um, there's a version that was released on Austin City Limits that is actually better than the album version. I believe that's the one I included here. Because her vocals on this are soaring. Um, it's uh, it's about someone who got left and who's willing to take back, basically give up some of some of their self to have this relationship back. It's kind of it's a song about a broken person calling out someone who is also broken, and it's amazing. But yeah, Love Has No Pride. It'll hit you in the feels, and it's definitely a deep country sound. She recorded this one down in Austin with a lot of these people that we've been talking about, and it's pretty damn amazing. What do you think about Love Has No Pride by Bonnie Raitt?
I mean, honestly, how can you not like Bonnie Raitt? She has a phenomenal voice.
Hmm.
She has a great sound in everything she does. This again, this was an Austin City Limits one. I can see that in the title. I just wouldn't have put that one in there because I think you ought to hear the studio version, what actually made it onto the album, and really, I understand live is live, and that's how they are. There's nothing wrong with this song overall. I just would have done a different video.
Okie dokie.
Probably the not live one on this one. But like I said, Bonnie Raitt is great. There's
Hmm.
absolutely nothing wrong with Bonnie Raitt. I can't think of any songs of hers that aren't just phenomenal. And she really kind of came into even greater popularity in the 90s when she came out with that album that became mainstream and
Yeah,
pop.
yeah.
And
She
so
was
people,
pretty underground for most of her
yeah,
career,
yeah, and so
even
people
though her
got
dad
ex
was famous.
yeah, and so people got exposed to Bonnie Raitt at that point because that was a great album. Yeah, no, good song, great singer.
Thank you. Thank you. The next one is, I believe they refer to this as the Rolls Royce of country western music. Uh, it is He Stopped Loving Her Today by George Jones. I'm sorry, I need to say that a different way. He stopped loving her today. And no, there are no spaces between those words. It's one word. George Jones was an American country music singer and songwriter. He achieved international fame with a long list of hit records and is well known for his distinctive voice and phrasing. For the last 2 decades of his life, Jones is frequently referred to as the greatest country singer. He has more than 160 chart singles in his name from 1955 until his death in 2013. Jones served in the United States Marine Corps and was discharged in 1953. In 1959, Jones recorded White Lightning, written by the Big Bopper, which launched his career as a singer. Years of alcoholism compromised his health and led to his missing many performances, earning him the nickname No Show Jones. Jones died in 2013, aged 81, from hypoxic respiratory failure. George Jones drank a lot of whiskey and smoked a lot of cigarettes. There's no two ways about it. But He Stopped Loving Her Today is a song recorded by George Jones. It has been named in several surveys as the greatest country song of all time. I would not necessarily disagree with that. It was released in April of 1980, so pretty late in his career because he started in 55 as the lead single from the album I Am What I Am. The song was Jones' first solo #1 single in 6 years. It was written by Bobby Braddock and Curly Putnam. The week after Jones' death in 2013, the song re-entered the Hot Country Songs chart at number 21. And as of November 2013, the single has sold 500,000 copies in the United States. Since 2008, it has been preserved by the Library of Congress and the National Recording Registry. The song was ranked number 142 on Rolling Stone's 2021 500 Greatest Songs of All Time ranking. So, a lot of people think this song is about Tammy Wynette. Um, I think he may have been channeling thinking about her when he was writing it because they had a very tumultuous relationship for several years. The song actually wasn't written by him, it was written by Bobby Braddock and Curly Putnam. The reason he stopped loving her today is because they were carrying him to his funeral. You listen to that song real closely. They laid a wreath upon his door. Um, It's because he died. That's how come he stopped loving her today. And that is the most countrified thing I can think of. Um, there's even like a little breakdown and talk about how his friend He finally saw a smile on his face, and then he busts out with that. He stopped loving her today. Um, this song is oof. Yeah, it'll get you there. It's a sad one. And it's a classic piece. I couldn't do a list without putting "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry" and "He Stopped Loving Her Today." So, what do you think about "He Stopped Loving Her Today"?
George Jones is a great classic voice.
Yeah.
Very classic country, and I mean eh, very easy to listen to when he sings. He's
Hmm.
phenomenal. He stopped loving her today. I've known this song forever. It's when I talked earlier about Hank Williams, that Hank Williams was a little too old country for me. George Jones was really on the cusp of where that changed and got into a different, almost a different version of country. And this is kind of where I came in country music was George Jones. I I I grew up around country music. I mean, road trips for me, that's what I got in the car. We
Oh
had
yeah.
we had we had an 8-track tape and it was just all country. So I knew a lot of the older country and a lot of the older music. George Jones was one of those, and he's awesome. He's phenomenal. No, I have no issues with this song.
No.
None at all.
Yeah, it needed to be in this list.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, I talk about that inauthenticity. I'm not talking about George Jones. I'm not talking about Dolly Parton, even though I did put a Dolly song in here, which,
Think
I
you
may
should
have,
have.
I may have to do a third one of country western music, and just so I could put in Dolly Parton.
I
Um,
mean, if you want to put a Dolly Parton one in here, um, and one that's going to hit all the feels, do the one about her patchwork quilt.
oh yeah, about her
Her
coat of
pet
many
her coat
colors.
her coat of many colors.
Oh
That one.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And read the story behind it.
Yeah.
Um, Dolly Parton is sorely missing from this list. Sorry.
No, you're right. You're right. I should have put a Dolly song in here. It was like that Johnny Lee song in the last list. I was just listening to it. I'm like, oh, shit, I didn't put Cherokee Fiddle in
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the next song is more of a modern tune. Um, it is definitely more of the poppier side of country. This is by Brandy Carlisle. It's The Story. She's an American singer, songwriter, and producer. Her music spans different genres, including folk rock, alternative country, Americana, and classic rock. During her career, she has received 11 Grammy Awards and 2 Emmy Awards, in addition to being nominated for an Academy Award. And as of 2021, Carlisle has released 7 studio albums. Her debut major label album, Brandy Carlisle 2005, was released to critical acclaim. Carlisle garnered wider recognition with her 2007 single, The Story, from her album of the same name. What can I say about the story?
Let me take this one.
Okay,
Let me take this one.
please.
So so I'm listening to this song and it starts out and I'm shaking my head. I'm like, there is absolutely nothing that stands out about this. She is like any of five female country singers
Hmm.
I could listen to. But I kept listening and I kept going, and then it picks up, and
Yeah, she loses
oh
her
my
mind.
God,
She
this
loses her
song
mind in that song.
this song goes from mediocre to greatness in a heartbeat. And it doesn't let go from there. It really
No, it does
doesn't.
not.
It changes because, like I said, and I kind of think that was probably very intentional with this. Because
Yeah.
she's very nondescript.
Uh-huh.
If you just listen to the first part of this song, literally, I think you will say to yourself, this is no different than any other modern female country artist. And
Yeah.
then it changes. Great
Yeah.
song. Great song.
Yeah. So she did a live version of this on Saturday Night Live for the Christmas episode like 4 or 5 years ago. You think she gets up there in this recording? They toned her ass down.
Hmm.
That's Saturday Night Live, and I couldn't find it because that's the one I wanted to put in here. It's like, God damn. But yeah, she's a that alt country state because there is an
Yeah.
alternative track in country, and a lot of this stuff tracks that sort of stuff, the stuff that we're talking about. Because again, you hear Brandy Carlisle broadly on alternative stations or indie stations, which is kind of where she lives. But she is amazing, and she actually made it on the country charts too. I think with that song. But I mean, how could you not? But again,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
intentionally, she's like,
Yeah. Yeah, and
real.
that's exactly what I think. As I was listening,
If you,
I was like, that was very intentional.
yeah,
I was surprised, very
yeah.
surprised.
The next song in this list is uh is an old one. It is a very, very old song. It is a an updated version, but the update is 35 years old. The name of the song is The Circle, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? It is by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and everyone else. Um, it's a popular Christian hymn written in 1907 by Ada R. Habersham with music by Charles H. Gabriel. It was also done by the original progenitor of the Carter family, the old man. Um, and they recorded it in like 1920, I want to say. The stuff in here is really sparse, unfortunately, because there was a group of ethnologists who during the it was part of the WPA, so I guess it would have been the early 30s. Uh, Part of the WPA was sending these people out to record folk music in different parts of the country so we didn't lose it. That is how the Carters became popular because they went to this one family that did music all around this particular holla, and it was the whole family was involved because they all had instruments and they all played and sang. So it was real big with the Carters. One of the first recordings was of the song was of the Carters, and the song has lapsed in the public domain. Most of the chorus appears in later songs as "Can the Circle Be Unbroken" and "Daddy Sang the Bass." So it's got the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. It has got Roy Acuff, Cynthia Bitterman, Sam Bush, Paulette Carlson, Bob Carpenter, Gretchen Carpenter, June Carter Cash, Johnny Cash, Cindy Cash, Roseanne Cash, John Cowan, Steve Dahl, John Denver, Fort Worth's own, Jimmy Faden, Bella Fleck of Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, Paul Flynn, Radney Foster, Vince Gill, Jeff Hanna, Melody Hanna, John Hyatt, Chris Hillman, Bruce Hornsby, Jimmy Ibbotson, Helen Carter Jones, David Jones, Bashful Brother Oswald, Bill Lloyd, Jimmy Martin, Michael Martin Murphy, Roger McGuinn, Tracy Nelson, Robert Owerman, Brad Parker, Don Schlitz, Earl Scruggs, Gary Scruggs, Randy Scruggs, Steve Scruggs, Lynn Schultz, Marty Stewart, Wendy Waldman, Steve Warner, Cheryl White, Shannon White, Bobby White, Lee Von Helm, Emmylou Harris, and John motherfucking Prime. Everybody that they could get sang this version. So originally, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band released a version in 1974, which had a bunch of the Carters in it. When they decided to re-release or do a new version of this song in 1990, they wanted to get everybody they could get who was still alive, i.e., Roy Acuff. Roy Acuff died shortly after this was made. Luckily, we got him in the video. Um, so the video is the actual video that was released for the song. So the recording, it's not actually them playing. It's they recorded it all in one day, and then the sound you get is what they finished recording. It's cleaned up, it's finished, but it basically shows them recording it throughout the day. Um, this song is this is about this is about a young boy who's accompanying his mother to the grave, and him taking solace that he will see her once again, because the circle is unbroken. A lot of tragedy in Appalachia, which is kind of part of the South, even though it's fairly far north. Um, but the ideas of the poverty, sadness, um, they penetrate up and down that chain of mountains and these little valleys, which they call hollows or hollers, which is where the people live. Because you can't actually live on the side of a mountain. Well, I guess you can, but they're very isolated communities, and so these people would sing these hymnals, and they became part of the community. These groups or families would sing these for everybody in town during celebrations like Christmas, Easter, stuff like that. And then it kind of took on a life of its own, as we discussed with the Hank Williams thing. That was the first round, was that those ethnomusicologists going out and recording the stuff, and then they released records all over the country, and it blew up. And then Hank Williams comes along and kind of codifies it a little bit. It's all part of the soup, which is why everybody wanted to be associated with it. And some of the best singers at the time were involved, i.e., Emmylou Harris, John Prine, and Lee Von Helm, who we feature more in this list a little later on. What did you think about Can the Circle Be Unbroken?
So as I was listening to it, number one, I was thinking "We Are the World" for country music,
Yeah, yeah, kind of.
because the amount of people in there. When I look through the list, I'm very glad you did this song because it does feature Johnny Cash. Because as I was looking through the list, that was another name that I was like is sorely missing from this list is
Why
Johnny
ain't you got no
Cash.
Johnny Cash in
Yeah,
there?
so I was glad to see Johnny Cash in that one because I hadn't heard this song before. Because in my personal opinion, and my opinion is generally right, if you don't like Johnny Cash, go fuck yourself.
I would agree with
Um,
that. I would agree with that. You don't like Johnny Cash, go fuck yourself. What's wrong with you?
exactly. What is wrong with you?
What is wrong with
Um,
you?
Again, I'm gonna go back to what I said just a little while earlier. If you didn't have Johnny Cash, you don't have rock and roll.
True. Johnny Cash's first couple of singles are rock and roll
Yeah,
songs.
yeah. Um, these are the foundations of went what changed country and changed blues and turned it into rock and roll as you know it today. I
Uh-huh.
don't care if you're a metalhead, a goth head, a pop head, it doesn't matter. If you are in the rock genre of
Uh-huh.
music, you gotta look back to the roots, and you've got to attribute it to these country
Yeah.
music artists that
Oh yeah.
blended this stuff and created a new sound.
Oh
Johnny
yeah.
Cash is a big, big, big part of that.
Yeah.
Elvis Presley was a big, big, big part of that because of what they did when they fused the type of music together.
Yeah.
Um, but I went the long way around to say this. This is a really good song. I enjoyed it. I loved watching all the country music stars that were in it as the names are just flashing
Yeah.
by.
You're like,
Uh,
God. Yeah, it was the
well,
last
and
time
that's where
Earl
I said
Scruggs
this
was
is
ever
that
on camera.
that's where I said this is We Are the World country.
Yeah.
Even though this predates We Are the World. Really good. Good song, good choice.
Thank you. Thank you. I kind of loved it, and I love that everybody was in it.
Hmm.
When I said everybody else, I kind of meant it. Uh, Marty Stewart sang the shit out of his part. Bruce Hornsby really, really good. The Emmylou Harris and Levon Helm singing together. I wish I could have heard more of that in my lifetime. Because their two voices are great. Levon Helm of the very famous uh country rock band, The Band, which again we have a country song that they did. Um, that was written for basically written because they wanted to hear Levon Helm sing the shit out of something. But yeah, this one is just it's amazing. Okay, the next one is a cover. It's Poncho and Lefty, covered by Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard. Um, it was originally by Towns Van Zandt. Towns Van Zandt is in the video and he's playing guitar in this. Uh, Willie Nelson is an American singer, guitarist, songwriter, actor, and activist. He was one of the main figures of the outlaw country subgenre that developed in the late 60s as a reaction to the conservative restrictions of the Nashville sound, which I spoke about a little bit earlier. The critical success of his album Shotgun Willie, combined with the critical and commercial success of Red-Headed Stranger and Stardust, made Nelson one of the most recognized artists in country music. Nelson has acted in over 30 films, co-authored several books, and has been involved in activism for the use of biofuels and the legalization of marijuana. Uh, Kids, Willie Nelson's been smoking weed since 1960. I can tell you that for a fact. Nelson wrote his first song at age 7 and joined his first band at 10. During high school, he toured locally with the Bohemian Polka as their lead singer and guitar player. After graduating from high school in 1950, he joined the U.S. Air Force, but later discharged due to back problems. After his return, Nelson attended Baylor University for 2 years, but dropped out because he was succeeding in music. He worked as a disc jockey at radio stations in his native Texas and at several radio stations in the Pacific Northwest, all the while working as a singer and songwriter throughout the late 50s. During that time, he wrote songs that would become country standards, including Funny How Time Slips Away, Hello Walls, Pretty Paper, and Crazy. In 1960, he moved to Nashville, Tennessee, then signed a publishing contract with Pamper Music that allowed him to join Ray Price's band as a bassist. In 1962, he recorded his first album, And Then I Wrote. It succeeded, enabled Nelson to sign with RCA Victor in 1964 and join the Grand Ole Opry the following year. Since we're mentioning Ray Price, I might as well say Dolly Parton's song, um, I Will Always Love You, which is way better than Whitney Houston's version. And I will fight somebody who says different, is about Ray Price because she also split away from Ray Price, just like Willie Nelson had to. After mid chart hits in the late 70s, Nelson grew weary of the corporate Nashville music scene. In 1972, he moved to Austin, Texas, returned to perform and appearing frequently at the Armadillo World Headquarters. Um, Poncho and Lefty originally Poncho and Lefty originally Poncho and Lefty with an O instead of an A is a song written by country singer songwriter Townes Van Zandt. Perhaps his most well-known song, Van Zandt recorded his original version of this song in 1972 on his album The Late Great Townes Van Zandt. The song has been recorded by several artists since its composition and performed by Van Zandt, with a 1983 version by Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard reaching #1 on the Billboard country charts. In 2021, Van Zandt's version was ranked number 498 in Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. And I'm going to say this now. I love Townes Van Zandt. I think he's a great guitar player and he's an incredible songwriter. However, he is not a great singer. He does not sing this song well. He does play the shit out of this song when he can not concentrate on singing and concentrate on playing. And you can hear it in this version of the song because all that finger picking Spanish guitar, that ain't Willie doing that. That's Townes. He is also one of the federales in the video. Um, I do not like the lead up, the dun 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 dun, and then it goes into the song. I wish that wasn't on here because I think it ruins this song. Well, a little bit because it's only like 10 seconds. Um, this is about to because I've heard Townes Van Zandt talk about it. He was down in Mexico, um, playing it in northern Mexico, just across the border, and on Mexican TV, he talked about these two bandits who'd one got killed during a robbery and the other one got away and ran off to America. Well, he was originally an American. And he thought it was really interesting, so he wrote this song, Poncho and Lefty. I always liked it because I always assumed Lefty was left-handed, so it kind of made me happy. But this is one of those old cowboy songs that Willie Nelson totally sings the shit out of. Um, I like Merle Haggard, but Merle Haggard is more, he's part of that California Bakersfield sound, which is was big in country western music in the late 60s, early 70s, which has brought a lot of that conservatism into Nashville. I am not crazy about Merle Haggard's career. I don't think he's as good as he was touted. Um, but in this case, he sings this part just fine. Um, Willie Nelson did need someone else to sing it. I would have loved to have heard Willie and Ray Charles sing this like they did Seven Spanish Angels, but that wasn't a thing yet. So, but yeah, Pancho and Lefty, this is a beautiful old country western song that I just love. It makes me happy. I can listen to it on rotation over and over again because it's just beautiful. What do you think about Pancho and Lefty?
The biggest comment I can make about this song is similar to one I made just a few minutes ago. If you don't like Poncho and Lefty, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah, what's
This
wrong
is a
with you?
great song. I love the Merle Haggard Willie Nelson version. I've heard this for years and years
Mhm.
and years. This was a favorite of my father-in-law's. He used to play this out on the patio all the time. He loved this song. It's a great one. Great pick on this list. Great song.
Yeah, I love this tune. It's we need to get some Willie in there anyway.
And please, if you're offended by my comment, keep being offended.
Yeah, go fuck yourself. Fuck is wrong with you? The next song is actually by a Canadian band, but the main singer, Levon Helm, is from Arkansas. So the band was a Canadian American rock band formed in Woodstock, New York in 1967. It consisted of Canadians Rick Dano, Garth Hudson, Richard Manuel, and Robbie Robertson, and the American Levon Helm, who normally played drums. The band's music combines elements of Americana, folk, rock, R&B, jazz, and country, which influenced artists included George Harrison, Elton John, The Grateful Dead, Eric Clapton, Wilco, and King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. That's right, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Between 1958 and 1963, they were the group known as the Hawks and were the backing band for rockabilly singer Ronnie Hawkins. And they were based out of Toronto. In the mid 60s, they gained recognition for backing Bob Dylan on his 1966 concert tour as Dylan's first electric band. After leaving Dylan and changing their name to The Band, they released their 1968 debut album, Music from Big Pink, which was a big house that they all lived in Woodstock, New York, because it was a pink house, so they just called it Big Pink. And it's a CD album, 1969's The Band, to critical acclaim and commercial success. Pink Floyd's Roger Waters deemed it the second most influential record in the history of rock and roll, and music journalist Al Aronowitz called it country soul, a sound never heard before. The band's most popular songs included The Wait, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Up on Cripple Creek, Stage Fright, Cahoots, Rock of Ages, and Northern Lights of the Southern Cross. The band performed a farewell concert on November 25th, 1976. Footage from those events was released in a 1978 concert film, The Last Waltz, directed by Martin Scorsese. So, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down was written by Robert Robertson. It was originally recorded by the band in 1969 and released on their eponymous second album. Levon Helm provided the lead vocals. The song is a first person narrative relating to the economic and social distress experienced by the protagonist, a poor white Southerner, during the last years of the American Civil War when George Stoneman was raiding Southwest Virginia. Now, Robbie Robertson, um, half Jewish, half Native American, Canadian, went down to visit Levon Helm's family. And they were talking about the Civil War because Robbie Robertson just didn't have any information, and he figured the best way to get that information is talk to a Southerner from Arkansas. And what the old man told him was, he's like, "Here's the thing: we were beat because we couldn't outcompete them um, financially, not because there wasn't enough fight in us." Um, with the refrain, also what we were fighting for was wrong because it hurt the poor people in the South just as much as it hurt everybody else, the poor white people in the South, um, which is something that the South basically had to come to terms with, and I think in some cases still needs to come to terms with in some parts. Um, but he thinks that at some point the South will rise again, and what he meant by that, as far as Robbie Robertson could tell, was that the South won't always be on its knees. Once it can admit that the Civil War was a bad idea. But so he goes back up to uh, Woodstock, New York, Big Pink, and writes this song because A, he wanted to leave on to sing it, but about the Civil War from the perspective of a guy who was just trying to make a living and a war is going around him. And that's what this song is about. Um, and again, Robbie Robertson, a half Jewish, half Native American Canadian, did not understand the implications of this song when he wrote it, especially in 1969. But in my opinion, and I could be wrong about this song transcends those ideas to the idea of it was a poor Southern dude just trying to make his way in the world, because that's what the song's about. Elton John did it a few years later with um, My Father's Gun, which is basically covers this exact same subject matter, except it was a guy who was on a Mississippi riverboat. But the same type of thing, poor Southern white dude whose entire world got flipped upside down because rich dudes wanted to own other people. Um, that is what the song's about. I love it, and honestly, when Robbie Robertson wrote it, his idea was we'll let we'll let one of the other guys sing like a little part of a verse, but for the most part, we want Levon to sing this, and we're just gonna back his ass up. Um, and when they recorded it, he told Levon all of that, all of that angst that your dad has and is going on. We want you to let that out. On the original recording, it's muted, but on the last waltz, he sings this like he's dying. Um, and that's why I included that version of it because Virgil Kane is my name. Worked on the Danville line. Just oh my God. What do you think about the night they drove old Dixie down?
I'm not sure I can say much more than you already have. This is a great song. It really is. There's not a thing I don't like that I can find wrong with this song. I really, really like it. It's really, really good. Um, very, very good song to be in this list representative of what country music is. So
Mhm.
outstanding, outstanding.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's more considered a pop song, but honestly, this is a country song. The next one also kind of considered a pop song, but is actually a folk country song, kind of expanding the genres. It's Starry, Starry Night or Vincent by Don McLean. Um, He's an American singer, songwriter, guitarist known as the American Troubadour or King of the Trail. He is best known for his 1971 hit American Pie, an 8.5 minute folk rock song that has been referred to as a cultural touchstone. His other hits include Vincent, Dreidel, Castles in the Air, and Wonderful Baby, as well as his rendition of Roy Orbison's Crying and the Skyliners' Since I Don't Have You. His crying is pretty good. He's not as good as Roy Orbison's, but pretty damn good. There's another guy I need to put in here, Roy Orbison.
Oh, that's true. Yep, he
Yeah, I'm gonna
belongs
have
in
to do
here
a third
too.
one of these. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so McLean's song "And I Love You So" has been recorded by Elvis Presley, Perry Como, Helen Reddy, Glenn Campbell, and others. In 2000, Madonna had a hit with a rendition of American Pie. So his career has been long and fairly lauded. Vincent was written as a tribute to Vincent van Gogh. Is commonly known opening lyric "Starry, Starry Night" is a reference to Van Gogh's 1889 painting of Starry Nights. McLean wrote the lyrics in 1970 after reading a book about the life of Van Gogh. It was released on McLean's 1971 American Pie album. The following year, the song topped the UK singles charts for 2 weeks and peaked at number 12 in the United States, where it also hit number 2 on the easy listening charts. The song makes use mainly of the guitar, but also includes the accordion, marimba, and violin. A new, longer recording of the song was released on McLean's 1992 album Classics. And in July of 2020, the original handwritten lyrics went up for sale for $1.5 million. So, um, when I say a lot of songs should affect you emotionally when you're listening to the minor chords that he's just quietly thumbing his fingers through, and he talks about Vincent van Gogh's life and how they didn't understand you when you were alive. Maybe the he keeps saying maybe someday they will, maybe someday they will. At the very end of the song, it's they 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 didn't understand you while you were here, and they probably never will. Starry, starry night, and it's just heartbreaking. This song is heartbreaking about a guy that died 200 years ago. Well, not quite 200, but yeah, close enough. Um, but it's a love letter to Vincent van Gogh, another artist by someone who's an artist, and it kind of bothers me that this song was never big. I remember hearing it in relation to country music songs. You know what I mean? Like we had a I guess you'd call it an easy listening station here that would play a country song and then a pop song and then a rock song and then a country song and then a pop song and then a rock song. And they did this all day. And they were the biggest station around at the time.
TVIL?
Um, yeah, yeah, it was mostly for your parents,
Yeah.
but it was kind of beautiful. But yeah, you would hear stuff like this on KVIL all the time. What do you think about Vincent or Starry Starry Night by
Uh,
Don McLean?
Don McLean is another one who's got a really great voice. I love the fact that it's about Starry Night. We talked about that in our impressionist episode that I love
Hmm.
Starry Night. It is my favorite painting of all time. I even have a Hawaiian shirt that is Starry Night. Um, Don McLean is just he's got a very pure voice, a very good voice. Most people know him from the song American Pie. Um, I don't know of who wouldn't know him and his voice.
Yeah,
This is a really, really good song. I'm glad you put it on here. I was not familiar with this song previously. Um, and but great representation here. Definitely listen to the whole thing of this. It's a beautiful song.
yeah, yeah. It'll get you there too.
Hmm.
Again, I every song in this list affects me emotionally. Including the last one, which is not something you would think I would be into. So let's talk about it. It's "I'll Fly Away" by Gillian Welch and Alison Krauss. Um, it's a hymn written in 1929 by Albert E. Brumley and published in 1932 by Hartford Music Company in a collection titled Wonderful Message. Brumley's writing was influenced by the 1924 secular ballad, The Prisoner's Song. I'll Fly Away has been called the most recorded gospel song. It's frequently used in worship services by Baptists, Pentecostals, Nazarenes of the Church of Christ, and many Presbyterians and Methodists. It appears in many hymnals where it's listed under the topics of eternal life, heaven, and acceptance. It is a standard song. Bluegrass jam session is often performed at funerals, including jazz funerals in the New Orleans tradition. To me, it is still a prisoner song. It is sung by prisoners or slaves or the downtrodden. That's what this song is about. And this version is from the "Oh Brother, We're Out There" soundtrack. Um, Gillian Welsh is an incredible, I believe, gospel and bluegrass singer. Alison Krauss is an incredible bluegrass singer. Uh, their voices blend so beautifully in this, and this is the way the song was supposed to be heard with the two of them singing, and a very light musicality in the background, but it's old-fashioned music. I don't think there's any electrification on it. Um, but this is the way the song is supposed to be heard, and it's soft and it's sweet and it's delicate. Um, and I'm really thankful that the Coen brothers are as deeply into bluegrass as they are, because it's one of those things that it could have been just like a little throwaway song. That's not what they did. They were like, you know what? We should get a gospel person and a bluegrass person to sing this together. And Gillian Welch and Alison Krauss, it's like, oh well, there you go. And it's amazing. Um, So, what do you think about "I'll Fly Away"?
It's a good song. I like older bluegrass country like that. And like you said, I didn't know it was on "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou." That's a great album. It really
Yeah.
is. If you want to get a good representation of what some good old bluegrass is, listen
Hmm.
to that album.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It won a lot of awards. But yeah, this is a great song. I think great for this list. Um, I will say I absolutely think you need to do a part three because we've identified some people that definitely were not represented here. Johnny Cash by himself needs to be represented. Dolly Parton, Roy
Hmm.
Orbison. I think you've
Hmm.
got some that we really need to talk about because some of those people and stay away from the 90s if you want to stay away from the 90s. I personally like some of that stuff, but the people I'm talking about are really the people that help bring about a lot of the other music that we listen to today.
Yes.
And so
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
I think it's important.
I agree wholeheartedly. And there's a couple of those guys, 90s guys that actually do like. It's very few. Um, but yeah, some of those people, yeah, like Alison Krauss being one of them. Alison Krauss, fucking incredible.
Hmm.
Her career was
Hmm.
huge in the 90s. Um, Emmylou Harris, we need to do something. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do a third episode.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I think it's deserving of such.
I agree. Well, that is the list as we sit. I hope you guys were following along as we went. That's the best way to do these, as
Yep,
Jeffrey can attest.
agreed. That's the way to do it. I love it. I love it. I love
Can
it.
we break
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to say, let me say this. With that, we're going to step over to the murdery side of the house.
murder?
Before we get there, I'm going to recommend everybody take a pause, get up, go to the bathroom, stretch, relax. Got a long one coming up, and I'll talk more about it in a minute. So we will be back in just a moment. For you, it will be instantaneous. Okay, hopefully everybody is back from the restroom or whatever, or got a snack even. Um, I'm not going to give you links to this case. I want you, I talked about this before. In certain cases. Take notes. This gets twisted. There's a lot of fragments in here, and I want you to pay careful attention to this case. Um, so before we get started, I'm taking a brief detour. I said last week we're stepping away from our A to Z journey through America's serial killers for just one episode. Not because that series is going anywhere, because it's not, but because every now and then a case comes along that is too strange, too layered, and too unsettling to ignore. Um, what you're going to hear is not a fast story. It's not a simple one. This is a case built on fragments, buried evidence, and details that only make sense once you step back and look at the whole picture. So, again, I recommend you take notes because by the time we reach the end of this story, your understanding of what happened is going to shift more than once. And when it does, you're going to realize this case isn't just dark, it's designed to mess with you. Um, so it was a cool spring morning, April of 2021. The people of Briar Ridge, Tennessee, gathered behind the old brick town hall to witness something they had been waiting 20 years to see. A time capsule that the town council sealed in the ground back in December of 2001 was finally being opened. And this was meant to be a celebration, a moment of nostalgia. It was a chance for the town to look back at who they used to be. Instead, though, the moment the capsule cracked open, the celebration died because resting on top of the letters, newspaper clippings, and school drawings was a Polaroid photograph. A Polaroid no one remembered placing inside, and it was a Polaroid decrypting a crime scene from 1999, a murder that had gone unsolved for more than 2 decades. And the photograph contained details that only the killer should have known. First responders were called, the crowd was escorted away, and that April morning turned into one of the darkest days in Briar Ridge history because, as investigators would soon learn, this photograph shouldn't have existed. When small towns bury time capsules, they usually expect the past to come back wrapped in warm nostalgia, old yearbooks, newspaper headlines, letters from children imagining what the future might look like. And these are supposed to remind us of who we were, who we hope to become, and how much or how little things have changed. But in the spring of 2021, Briar Ridge, Tennessee got something else entirely. As the capsule was lifted from the ground and the seal broken, the very first item visible was a Polaroid photograph, not a postcard, not a children's drawing, not a commemorative letter, a Polaroid, face down. It was damp from the soil, and then when the mayor reached in and flipped it over, the crowd fell silent. The photograph captured a murder scene, one that was never released publicly, one that no one involved in the investigation had ever discussed outside of official reports, and one that took place 22 years earlier. The victim was a local man named Jacob Rainier, whose 1999 homicide had gone cold almost as soon as it began. His body was found in an abandoned textile warehouse on the edge of town, the same warehouse teenagers used to dare each other to explore back in the 80s and 90s. And his death had been a shock to the town, but with little evidence, no witnesses, and the limitations of small town policing at the end of the millennium, the case quietly slipped into unsolved status until that Polaroid appeared. And this is where things get even stranger. The angle of the photograph did not match the position in which police found Jacob's body. The lighting suggested it was taken before the power to the warehouse had been cut, and the image showed a detail that had never been released even to the family. In his right hand was a small hand-carved wooden token, and the token was missing when officers arrived at the scene. It wasn't in the evidence logs, and it was missing from every collection photo, but there it was, perfectly clear in a Polaroid that has supposedly been buried in the ground for 2 decades.
Okay, wait a minute. I don't want to derail your train of thought. I just
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure I am with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because I'm typing notes, that's what all that clacking you're hearing
Mm-hmm.
is. But Jacob Vernier was killed in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
On top of this capsule was a Polaroid of the crime scene, which could only have been taken by the killer
That's
or
what,
someone associated with the crime, possibly a
and, and
co-conspirator.
those are actually the next two questions I have. Yes.
Okay.
How
Um,
Let me ask those questions real quick.
okay.
How did a photograph of an unsolved murder end up inside a sealed time capsule? And more importantly, why did whoever placed it there wait 20 years to let the town find it?
Okay. When they put time capsules in the grounds, there are a lot of people around.
Hmm.
Somebody would have saw that.
Well, or somebody had to dig it up,
Uh,
unseal it, put it back in, and seal it back.
Good God. Don't
Yeah,
they usually put concrete on top of those fuckers?
yes, yes. So that's what I'm talking about. This is where everything gets strange.
Okay. I'm with you. I am with you. I'm sorry. I had to get my little
Yeah.
brain around
No,
that.
I
Okay.
know, I know. The answers to those questions honestly would take the town back to a case that never should have gone cold. And it would uncover secrets the town did not know it was still keeping before the photograph, before the time capsule, but before the mystery swallowed the town whole. There was simply Jacob Rainier. Jacob was born in 1974 in Briar Ridge, and it was a town where everybody knew everybody, or at least thought they did. He grew up on Pine Hollow Road. He was the middle child in a family of five. His father worked maintenance at the local lumber mill. His mother was a receptionist at the dentist office on Main Street. They were not a wealthy family, but they were a stable one. They were involved in church events, softball leagues, and every Friday night football game that the high school played. Friends remember Jacob as the kind of guy everybody got along with. Quiet, but funny once he trusted you, smart, but not full of himself, a little awkward, but in a way that made people feel safe rather than uncomfortable. He did well in school, especially in shop classes and mechanical sciences. And after graduating in 1992, he enrolled in the Tennessee College of Applied Technology in Knoxville, where he studied industrial systems maintenance. 2 years later, he returned home and took a job at the fabrication plant, ironically, just a few doors down from the abandoned textile warehouse where he would eventually be found dead. Coworkers described him as reliable, punctual, and focused. He was the kind of employee a small town factory depended on. But Jacob had another side, one most people didn't see unless they spent real time with him. He was a collector, he was a historian in his own quiet way. He loved finding old objects, hand carved toys, antique tools, tokens from long shuttered businesses, and relics from the town's early days as a mill town. He would catalog these items meticulously, storing many in wooden boxes he built himself. His sister later described him as, quote, a man born in the wrong century, someone who felt more at home flipping through flea market tables than navigating the digital world that was emerging around him. Jacob also struggled with something few people knew about. He had a sense of restlessness. In the months leading up to his death, he had begun telling friends he felt off at work, as if someone was watching him. He joked about it at first, saying maybe one of the machines had become sentient, but later admitted he was serious. He also mentioned to his sister that he had stumbled upon onto something weird about the old textile warehouse, something he planned to look into, but he never explained what that meant. By December of 1999, Jacob was pulling long shifts during the plant's year-end rush, and according to coworkers, he seemed tired and distracted. Once a supervisor caught him staring at something in his palm, a small wooden object. But when asked what it was, Jacob simply closed his hand and said, quote, nothing important. 3 days later, he was found dead. No forced entry, no sign of a struggle near the building, no clear motive, just Jacob, cold and in the cold winter dark inside the warehouse he had told no one he planned to visit. For the next 2 decades, the case faded into the background of the town's history until the time capsule opened, until the Polaroid surfaced, when Jacob's wooden token, missing since the day he was found, reappeared. So now investigators had to go back to the beginning because everything they thought they knew about Jacob's death was suddenly on the table again. The time capsule ceremony itself had been planned for months. Briar Ridge loved its traditions, and this one felt special. In 2001, after the town completed reservations on its historic brick hall, the city council sealed a stainless steel capsule beneath a marble plaque engraved with the words, to be opened April 3rd, 2021, for the people of tomorrow. So it was it was a sentimental gesture during a very difficult time. The town was the country was still reeling from 911. The plant was undergoing layoffs. Families were struggling, and bearing something hopeful, letters, drawings, predictions for the future felt like a way to anchor the town. So in 2021, on that cool morning just days before Easter, dozens of residents gathered behind the hall with coffee in hand and kids bundled in jackets. Local news was there with a camera. The mayor, Bethany Crowley, gave a cheerful speech about connecting generations. A small brass band played, and the atmosphere was very warm, breezy, and nostalgic. But the mood shifted the moment the backhoe lifted the capsule from the soil. It wasn't rusted, it wasn't damaged. The lid still bore its original weld marks. The mayor tapped gently at the seal with a chisel as the crowd leaned in, and when the lid finally loosened, she lifted it with a small dramatic flourish, expecting applause. Instead, she froze. Inside the capsule, right on top, was the Polaroid, a Polaroid no one remembered placing inside. The photograph, as I'd said earlier, was lying face down, damp around the edges, but otherwise intact. The mayor hesitated before picking it up, and people laughed softly, expecting maybe a silly photo from a 2001 party. But when she flipped it over, the sounds of the crowd, laughter, chatter, and murmurs fell off instantly. Uh, they said that a woman gasped. Several people stepped back. A child was heard to ask, Mom, what is that? But received no answer. And the image showed a man lying on a concrete floor, illuminated by a harsh industrial light. His body position was unmistakably unnatural. Blood pooled beneath him, darkened by the age of the photo, and his eyes were half open. It was a crime scene. It was a murder scene. Then someone in the crowd said, is that Jacob Rainier? And another voice said, it can't be. The case was sealed off. No photos were ever released. Um, Behind the mayor, a city worker reached into the capsule to make sense of what they were seeing. Beneath the Polaroid rested letters written by children, several yellowed newspaper clippings for 2001, a signed photo of the high school football team, a sealed envelope labeled Future Me, and oddly, an empty evidence bag. People in the crowd noticed this. People recognized that style of bag, and someone said, that's a police bag. Why would it be in here? So within minutes, this ceremony transformed from a community event to an active crime scene. Police tape went up around the area. People packed up quietly. Parents hurried their children home. Local news stopped filming at the request of the police chief. And for the first time in over 20 years, the town confronted a nightmare it thought it had outgrown because whoever had killed Jacob Rainier had left behind a message and planted it in a place they knew the town would eventually find it. The question wasn't just why the photograph was there, it was how it got inside a capsule welded shut 2 decades earlier and who wanted it discovered in 2021, not 1999. You with me?
I am with you.
Okay.
I am okay.
You're what?
I okay.
Please go ahead.
When they put the capsule beneath the stone plaque that it was
Hmm.
underneath, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, was there more than one person that was there when that happened?
I don't have those details. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have those.
Okay.
The police department did take possession of the Polaroid within minutes of the time capsule being open, and officers handled it carefully, slipping it into evidence sleeve before escorting it away in a patrol car. They took it straight to the station rather than risk it being photographed by onlookers or local news. And the first thing investigators noticed was the clarity. Despite spending 2 decades sealed in the ground, the Polaroid was crisp. The colors had faded slightly, but the image was unmistakable. It depicted the interior of the old textile warehouse, shuttered since 1987 and demolished in 2007. There was the cracked concrete floor, the rusted metal shelving, the hanging fluorescent lights. They were all visible, and lying beneath one of those lights was the body of Jacob Rainier. But this is where the image becomes deeply unsettling. In official records, Jacob was discovered lying on his left side when officers entered the warehouse on December 12th, 99. But in the Polaroid, he's positioned on his back, arms slightly outstretched as is staged for the photograph. And this was the first discrepancy. The second was the lighting. When Jacob was found, the warehouse had been without power for months. The electrical grid feeding that part of town had been deactivated after a fire in late 1999. Officers responding to the scene used nothing but flashlights and portable lamps, yet in the Polaroid, a single fluorescent fixture overhead glowed with an unmistakable light, suggesting the photo had been taken before the building lost power. The third discrepancy was probably the most chilling. In Jacob's hand, visible in the Polaroid, but absent in every crime scene diagram, was that small wooden token. It was oval shaped, smooth on the edges, and etched with what appeared to be a series of short vertical lines carved in uneven strokes, kind of like a tally mark system on a primitive symbol.
Yeah.
Investigators had never recovered this token. No mention of it had appeared in the original evidence logs. No photograph from 1999 showed it. And Jacob's family had never seen anything like it among his possessions. But there it was, clearly in his hand, perfectly framed in the Polaroid, which is a detail only the killer would have known, a detail no one else should have been able to document. So the police had three immediate concerns. Number one, photograph was taken before Jacob was found. It captured evidence that did not exist when officers arrived, and it had somehow been placed into a sealed capsule that no one accessed for 20 years. Forensics attempted to identify the age of the film. They tested the chemical degradation on the Polaroid, and preliminary analysis estimated the photograph to have taken sometime between late 1998 and early 2001, which didn't help much except for one thing. Detectives confirmed the Polaroid film matching the exact type used had been discontinued in spring of 2000, meaning the photo could not have been taken after the year 2000, meaning the photo was taken before Jacob was discovered and not forged in the present. So at this point, the investigation went from curiosity to dread because someone took a picture of Jacob before the police ever arrived, removed the wooden token from his hand, staged the scene differently, and then placed the Polaroid into a time capsule the town intended to open 20 years later. This was not a coincidence.
Well, and there was an evidence bag at the bottom.
Right. This was a message. It was a challenge. This was a deliberate act by someone who wanted their secret dug up long after they were gone or long after they assumed no one would remember. Either way, the killer had planned for patience. And to understand why the Polaroid had been such a bombshell, we need to go back to the winter of 99 when the town was very different. Back then, the textile plant had only recently shut down, leaving hundreds without work. People were struggling, and the town was shrinking, and crime, while low, was creeping upwards in small but noticeable ways. On December 12th, 99, the police department received a call from a night watchman employed by the property management company overseeing the abandoned warehouse. The man reported seeing what looked like a broken window along the south wall and a shape on the floor inside. Two officers arrived at 11:42 p.m. Their flashlights cut through the air as they entered the warehouse. They described the interior as freezing cold, silent except from water dripping from rusted pipes. And when they reached the center of the main floor, they found the body of 19-year-old Jacob, a local community college student and part-time mechanic. Jacob had no criminal record, no enemies. He lived with his mother and sister and had told them he was going out to meet a friend that evening, but didn't say who, and he never came home. So Jacob was found on his left side. His knees were drawn slightly inward, his head resting near his arm as though he had collapsed mid motion. Officers initially considered whether he had suffered a medical event or that possibility vanished when they saw the lividity in the bruising. Jacob had been strangled. There were no ligature marks suggesting a manual strangulation. The medical examiner later confirmed extensive damage to the hyoid bone, which we've talked about before, which is classic kind of
Strangulation.
forceful compression of the neck. But something else was odd about the scene. There was almost no disturbance around the body, no signs of a struggle, no overturned debris, no footprints other than Jacob's leading into the warehouse as if he had walked in willingly. The coroner established the time of death between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m. based on body temperature and stomach contents, and that gave investigators a narrow window, but no one came forward to say they saw Jacob with anyone during that time. His family said he left the house around 8:15 wearing his jacket and carrying a small backpack. The backpack was later found near the east wall of the warehouse, zipped shut, containing only his school notebook and a few loose tools from the auto shop where he worked. There were no signs of a robbery. His hands were clean. Detectives noted that a man his size, who was 5'10" and physically fit, would almost certainly have scratched or clawed his attacker, yet there was nothing under his nails and not even skin cells, which raised an unnerving question. Had he even defended himself, or had he known his killer or trusted them enough to let them get close? No fingerprints were recovered, no DNA, no cigarette butts, no shoe impressions, no hair, no fibers, no nothing. Killer left behind zero physical traces, which is extremely rare in a hands-on homicide. The warehouse itself was barren enough that investigators couldn't even determine a clear motive. Was it drug? There was no evidence of drugs, no robbery, there was no missing items. Was there a personal conflict, but he had no known disputes? Was it random violence? Unlikely. There had been no transient activity in that part of town for months. And so the case went cold within 3 weeks. And looking back on it now, in light of the Polaroid, the most important detail isn't what was found at the scene, what wasn't. The wooden token seen in his hand in the Polaroid did not exist when police arrived. No one mentioned it, no one photographed it, no officer logged it. And Jacob's hands, when photographed at the morgue, were empty. So where did it go? Was it removed by the killer before police arrived? And if so, why? At the time, investigators could not know they were missing this crucial piece of the puzzle, and they couldn't know that years later, a time capsule sealed by school children wouldn't contain the only photograph of that token and a version of Jacob's body that didn't match the official scene. They couldn't know that the killer had already begun shaping a narrative that would remain buried for decades. When the Polaroid was examined more closely, every investigator who saw it focused on the same detail, that small wooden token resting in Jacob's right hand, roughly the size of a silver dollar and just thick enough to cast a faint shadow in his palm. The token bore a symbol that was etched into the grain, simple geometric pattern, almost like overlapping triangles. And it was the kind of design that feels meaningful if you can't really place why. And this was not a crime scene artifact because it was never mentioned in any police report from 99. It appeared nowhere in evidence photos, and yet in the Polaroid, it was unmistakable. In cases like this, object found in a victim's hand often tells investigators something critical. It's a clue left behind by the killer, a token of personal significance, a message for someone, a symbol of organized or ritual violence. But here's the part that immediately troubled investigators. Jacob's hands were documented as empty when his body was found, both at the scene and again at the morgue. No indentations, no residue, and no mention that a foreign object had ever been present, meaning the Polaroid captured a moment that police never witnessed. The Tennessee State Crime Lab was asked to study the Polaroid, and they found the photograph did appear to be from the late 90s based on the chemical aging. The lighting in the warehouse visible in the background suggested that power was still active, which had not been the case when police arrived. The angle of Jacob's body did not match the official police documentation, and the token in his hand cast a consistent shadow, meaning it was truly present, not drawn, edited, or added after the fact. Polaroid was real, but the moment it depicted could not be reconciled with recorded history. Experts looked at the symbol, the carving style, and the wood grain, and their findings was that the carving technique resembled folk art commonly in the Smoky Mountain region in the early 20th century. The wood was likely American hornbeam, which was a tree native to Tennessee but rarely used for small crafts anymore. And the geometric symbol did not correspond to any known religious, cultural, or esoteric groups in the area. It was unique, it was handcrafted, and it was placed with intention. So the theories began emerging almost immediately. Some detectives believed the token might be a calling card, something the killer left behind as a personal mark, and then later removed later before the body was discovered. But if that's the case, why place it in the Polaroid? Others believe the token symbolized something Jacob knew or discovered, something that warranted silencing him, but there was no evidence Jacob was involved in anything unusual. Some investigators wondered whether the token indicated a symbolic or ritualistic motivation, but the murder lacked every other ritual element. Nothing pointed towards an occult group, nothing suggested ceremony. So could the photograph be staged, fake, or manipulated? Forensics ruled that out. The photograph was consistent with analog cameras of the 1990s. The lighting, the shadow behavior, and the grain supported authenticity, and the deterioration was correct for a photograph buried underground for decades. The token existed, at least for the moment the Polaroid was taken. If the polling was accurate, and all the technical analysis says it is, then one of two things must be true. Either the killer placed the token in Jacob's hand, took the photograph, then removed the token before leaving, or someone else arrived at the crime scene before police do. Someone who entered the warehouse, found Jacob's body, placed the token in his hand, photographed him, took the token back, and left without being detected. So this now creates a secondary mystery. Why would someone stage a symbolic photograph and then hide it in a time capsule? What message were they trying to send and to whom? And this is the question that would lead investigators deeper into the past and into the final hours of Jacob Ranier's life. When the Polaroid surfaced at the time capsule ceremony, the police had no choice but to reopen the case. What had once been a dormant, unsolved homicide was suddenly the town's most urgent mystery. Detective Mark Ellison, who wasn't even in high school when Jacob was killed, was assigned as lead investigator. Ellison had a reputation for being methodical, detailed driven, and quietly relentless, who's exactly the kind of person who
That is
succeeds in cold case
exactly who
work.
you need for
Yeah,
this.
yes, absolutely. That's what
Yeah,
you want.
we don't need Barney, but I was just looking up. Briar Ridge is not a big town, so
No,
their talent pool might not have been huge.
no. So his first step was to revisit the original file, and on the very first pass, he noticed something troubling. The official crime scene photos were taken nearly 40 minutes after the officers arrived. This wasn't uncommon in 1999. Small departments often waited for a designated photographer, but it created a window where the scene may not have been fully secure. A window where someone could have entered the warehouse, a window long enough for the photograph and the Polaroid to have been taken. So Ellison tracked down both officers who discovered
It was
Jacob's body.
December in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
It gets cold up there because it is in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
They could have stepped out to get warmed up, and somebody could have. But if somebody was there, they could have. They were watching them.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. Please continue.
Oh
All right.
no, we'll get there.
Okay.
So Ellison tracked down both officers who discovered Jacob's body. They were both retired, and they were shocked when they heard about the photograph that had surfaced, especially one showing a detail they insisted had never been present. One officer, Robert Hale, swore he never saw anything in Jacob's hand and that he didn't recall anyone else entering the warehouse that night. The second, Linda Carter, hesitated before answering. She admitted that while they were waiting outside the warehouse for the photographer, as you said, stepped out, she believes she heard footsteps inside. She wrote it off at the time because old buildings make noise, especially in the winter, but now
Yeah.
seeing the Polaroid, she wasn't so sure. So if someone had been inside the warehouse before the photographer arrived, they could have placed the token in Jacob's hand, staged the body, taken the photograph, and left before anyone realized they were there, all without leaving a trace. The warehouse was long gone, again, demolished in 2011, but Ellison visited the site anyway, and he standed on the cracked concrete where the building once stood and tried to imagine the scene as it had been that night. The layout in the Polaroid didn't match the official photographs. Jacob's position was slightly different. His hand was angled more upward. His jacket was unzipped in the Polaroid, but zipped in the crime scene photos. It looked like the Polaroid had been taken before the killer altered something or before police disturbed the scene unintentional. Either scenario was possible. Ellison next met with Jacob's mother and sister. Their grief was still there. The
Hmm.
decades had softened it, but it was still unmistakable, and they had little new to offer. They had no strange visitors, no threats, and no hidden conflicts in Jacob's life.
Could you imagine being one of the people at the time capsule opening and seeing that?
I know,
That's
right?
fucked up. That's fucked up.
A friend of Jacob's from college, Evan Thorne, provided a small but intriguing detail. Jacob had recently become fixated on a local legend, something about old carvings or symbols hidden around town. There was a Briar Ridge treasure hunt dating back to the early 1900s, and Evans said Jacob had been researching something at the library but didn't know what. This was the first time in the entire case file that anyone mentioned symbols or carvings, and this was the same kind of symbol carved in the token and the Polaroid. So Ellison took the image to a regional folk art historian who believed the symbol resembled patterns used by early Tennessee craftsmen to mark property on tools, similar to a brand or a family emblem, not something mystical or ritualistic, more like a forgotten form of a signature. But no family in Briar Ridge matched the design, and if the symbol wasn't connected to Jacob, then it was almost certainly connected to whoever placed it in his hand. Word spread that the case had been reopened. Briar Ridge reacted exactly how you'd expect a small town to react. Speculation erupted, old rumors resurfaced. People who had been teenagers in '99 began asking uncomfortable questions about where their parents and neighbors were that night. Then came the anonymous call. A man's voice, distorted and never long enough to trace, and he said only one thing, quote, "The token was never meant for police. You're looking in the wrong place." And then he hung up. Ellison
The
doc
fuck?
Yeah, Ellison documented these calls meticulously. He had no idea if they were a prank or genuine, but either way, he knew one thing. Someone out there was watching the investigation unfold. Someone who didn't expect the Polaroid to ever see daylight, and someone who either knew Jacob's killer or was Jacob's killer. So the investigation had really barely been reopened when everything changed again. 3 weeks after the first Polaroid surfaced, Briar Ridge Elementary received an unmarked padded envelope simply addressed to the principal. No return address, no postage stamp, which means it was hand delivered. And inside was a single object wrapped in plain tissue paper, another Polaroid. This one was much clearer than the first, much less degraded, less warped by time underground. The lighting was stronger, almost theatrical, and coming from Jacob's left side. Right away, one detail jumped out. Jacob's body was in a different position. This time, he was sitting upright against a concrete pillar in the warehouse. His eyes were open, his hands rested at his side, and etched into the floor beside him in chalk or maybe white paint was the same geometric symbol from the wooden token. This Polaroid wasn't just a photograph. This was a message, and it was taken
Was
before
he
the first one.
alive in that picture?
So Ellison had to analyze the photo very carefully. He said
Okay.
several details stood out. Jacob's posture suggested he was positioned, not discovered, and it would take strength or willingness to lift a body upright. There was no sign of the token in this one, not in his hand nor on the floor, meaning that the second Polaroid predates the first one. The symbol on the ground is larger and more deliberate, like someone wanted it seen. And in this one, there's a faint silhouette that appears far back in the frame, and it's unclear whether it's a person, a shadow, or a trick of the light, but it's there. It's a shoulder and part of an arm. And this is the suggestion that someone was just outside a flash radius, and it was the closest that Ellison had ever come to seeing the killer. Forensic examiners did date this photo to the same time period as the first, late 1990s film chemistry, aging consistent with more than 2 decades of storage. But here's where it's alarming. This Polaroid had not been in the time capsule. Someone held on to this, preserved and waiting. Someone kept this photograph for over 20 years and chose its exact moment to release it. But why deliver it to a school? That was the question that disturbed everyone.
Well, wait a minute. It was delivered to the principal.
Right, but it was delivered to a school.
Yeah, it's true. I wonder if maybe they're thinking the principal had something to do with it.
So here's what the theories included: that the sender knew the school was the original site of the time capsule ceremony. The killer wanted maximum visibility, the kind that forces a police response. The envelope was a taunt, daring investigators to connect the dots, or the school itself had some symbolic meaning tied to the carving. No theory fit comfortably, and no one came forward to claim responsibility. But with two Polaroids, investigators could now begin constructing a timeline. Second Polaroid is taken first. Jacob is upright. The symbol is fresh. First Polaroid is taken next. Jacob is repositioned. The token appears in his hand. The killer or an accomplice removes the token, repositions the body again, leaves the scene. Police arrive later to a slightly altered version of what the photographs captured. That meant the killer likely stayed in the warehouse after the murder and before the police arrived, long enough to stage the body, take photographs, and long enough to revisit the body more than once. When the second Polaroid was enhanced, analysts did notice that something everyone had missed the first time. On the pillar behind Jacob, illuminated faintly by the camera flash, was a faint description, quote, "First you see what he saw." It matched no handwriting sample in the case file, and investigators couldn't tell if it was written in marker, charcoal, or grease, but it was unmistakably part of the scene. It appeared in the second Polaroid, but was missing from the first one. And it was missing from crime scene photos entirely, meaning someone wrote it after Jacob died and then erased it before police arrived. So these Polaroids, they were not an accident. They weren't random. They were stage moments. They were choreographed and curated. The killer or someone connected to the killer documented their crime scene in phases as if creating a sequence meant to be discovered long after the fact. And if first you see what he saw was the beginning, then investigators had to wonder what comes next. So we now have two Polaroids in evidence and details surfacing that had never been part of the original investigation. Detective Ellison shifted his focus to the one element that seemed to tie it all together, the symbol. The geometric pattern that was carved into the wooden token, the chalk version drawn beneath Jacob's body, and the inscription left on the pillar. First, you see what he saw. It was all pointing to something older than the crime itself, something Briar Ridge had forgotten. Small towns often have folklore. There are stories that are passed between kids, whispered on playgrounds, and embellished over generations. In Briar Ridge, one of those stories involved the so-called Ridgeway carvings. And according to local legend, early settlers in the 1880s would leave carved wooden markers around the region to identify trails, claim homesteads, or mark boundaries. The symbols were simple, geometric, and often unique to specific families. And over time, these carvings supposedly faded into obscurity, overshadowed by modern mapping and property laws.
Yeah.
But a
Plus,
handful of
but you
people,
got to remember those people couldn't read. A lot of those people couldn't read back
exactly,
then. So,
exactly.
yeah,
But a
it just
handful of,
does. It's just
yeah,
like the brands. The brand is a. It's so you could
100%.
tell. Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought of as this was the brand. But a handful of people in town remembered something else, a rumor that some of the carvings were not about land at all. They were warnings. Ellison met with the Briar Ridge Women's Historical Society, which was a group of retired teachers and librarians who had spent decades collecting oral histories, local artifacts, and genealogical records. And when Ellison showed them the symbol from the token, one of the women, Marjorie Ellerby, froze. He said she didn't speak for several seconds, and then she said quietly, quote, "I haven't seen that mark since I was a girl." Marjorie explained that in the 1950s, children around Briar Ridge used to chalk the mark on schoolyard walls as part of a game they called the Looker. The rules were simple. Someone would draw the symbol, else had to stare at it for 10 seconds, then they'd turn and describe what they saw. Kids claimed to see shadows, figures, glimpses of faces, most likely imagination or playground theatrics. But Marjorie said the symbol came from somewhere old or passed down, as she put it, from her own grandfather, who claimed he had seen the carving on old barn beams in the early 1900s. She described it as, quote, "a mark people used when they wanted others to stay away or pay attention, sometimes both." So this intrigued Ellison. He dug through public records, old journals, and the archives kept in the county courthouse basement. And what he found wasn't much, but it was enough. Between 1904 and 1918, there were four unsolved disappearances in the Briar Ridge area. In all four cases, the victim was last seen near the outskirts of town. A hand carved wooden disc was later found somewhere on the victim's property. Each disc bore a geometric symbol. The symbols varied slightly, but all resembled the pattern found on Jacob's token. Newspapers at the time referred to them as markers, speculating they were placed by vagrants or bandits. Nothing was ever proven. But what chilled Ellison was the final line of an article printed in the Briar Ridge Chronicle dating April 2nd, 1918, that said, quote, "Once the mark appears, the next sign is always the same, silent." It was meant poetically, but reading it in 2021, Ellison could not shake the idea that someone had revived an old practice, a practice that had once accompanied disappearances, a practice linked to carvings and tokens, and it was a practice the town had forgotten. Marjorie also mentioned a man who lived outside of Briar Ridge in the early 20th century, a recluse named Harlan Pike, who was a craftsman known for carving small wooden tokens. Historians believe Pike made hundreds of these little discs each carved with symbols that represented families, hunting grounds, or private warning. When Ellison investigated Pike's life, he found two things. The Pike family line had died out decades earlier, and Pike was rumored to have carved, quote, tokens for the dead. No one could explain what that meant. No one could say whether it was superstition or fact, but the idea struck. At first glance, there's no direct connection between a recluse who died in 1927 and a murder committed in 1999, but there were overlaps. Very strange one. The symbol on Jacob's token was consistent with Pike's carving style. Pike's tokens were rumored to appear mysteriously on porches or in barns after tragedies. Pike was said to have kept detailed journals, but those journals disappeared after his death. If those journals resurfaced, if someone inherited Pike's tools or symbols, if someone believed the markings meant something, it could explain why a modern murder scene included a symbol used a century earlier. The deeper Ellison dug, the more Briar Ridge seemed like a place with two histories. The visible one, the one written in records, newspapers, and town meetings, and the invisible one, whispered, fragmented, and half remembered. This was a history of symbols, warnings, and disappearances that were never solved, and tokens carved for reasons no one could fully articulate. Ellison began to suspect at that point that Jacob's death was not an isolated crime. It was part of something older, something cyclical, something that Briar Ridge had forgotten until the Polaroids forced it back into focus. And as Ellison stared at the symbol carved into Jacob's wooden token, one thought kept resurfacing. The killer didn't leave a message, they continued a tradition. Every small town has one house, the house people cross the street to avoid, the house where porch light never seems to work, the house where someone inside once saw something they shouldn't have. In Briar Ridge, that house belonged to Walter Kinley. Walter lived just 3 blocks from the old textile warehouse in 99. Back then, he was in his late 40s. He was a quiet, thin man with a permanent stoop and a reputation for keeping to himself. Not unfriendly, not hostile, just withdrawn in the way that make people very uneasy without knowing why.
Quiet.
When Jacob was murdered, police canvassed the area. Walter answered the door, and the report notes only 3 details. He was, quote, visibly anxious. He answered questions, quote, politely but minimally, and he claimed, quote, didn't hear or see anything unusual that night. That was that. Walter faded in the background of the investigation. 22 years later, that changed. Cold case detectives always recheck canvas notes. People forget things, memories change, guilt ages poorly. And Ellison visited Walter's house expecting to find either a man with nothing to add or a man who barely remembers the case. And he found neither. Walter now lived in a nursing facility on the edge of town after a stroke had left him partially paralyzed and mostly nonverbal. Still, when Ellison mentioned Jacob Rainier's name to the attending nurse, something surprising happened. The nurse said, quote, he reacts to that name. He always has. This, of course, raised red flags. So Ellison visited Walter's room. It was small, sparse, and tidy. There was a framed picture of a younger Walter on a fishing trip. There was a stack of well-worn Western novels, a small radio, nothing unusual. But when Ellison sat beside him and spoke softly, he said, quote, Walter, I'm looking into what happened to Jacob Rainier. He said Walter's eyes widened. He tried to speak. His mouth trembled. His throat sounded strained, but only a soft rasp emerged. Still, his eyes were clear, intense, and focused. He lifted one trembling hand and tapped twice on the bedside table. Then he pointed towards the window. Ellison asked gently, Walter, did you see something that night? Walter closed his eyes and began crying, but he didn't speak. He couldn't. After the visit, the nurse pulled Ellison aside and said, quote, there's something you should know. He used to have nightmares, always muttering about shadows. And once, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, he whispered the word, quote, the man with the light. Ellison immediately thought of the Polaroids, the lights, the shadows beyond the frame, the possibility of someone standing just out of the flash radius. Was Walter maybe the only living person who had seen that figure? So the nurse mentioned that Walter had a small lockbox stored in the facility office. He brought it with him the day he checked in. Staff never opened it. It belonged to Walter, but they kept it in a safe place. He couldn't manage since he couldn't manage it himself anymore. And with Walter's consent, granted via signature assistance, the staff allowed Ellison to open the box. Inside were newspaper clippings about the 1999 murder, a disposable camera, undeveloped, a small leather-bound notebook, and a folded scrap of paper with a hand-drawn version of the same symbol from the wooden token. Walter's handwriting was shaky and uneven. The entries were short, and they were just fragments of observations. Many pages were blank, but one page, dated December 13th, 1999, stood out. Quote, saw him again last night, the one with the light. He wasn't alone. Someone was already on the floor. I shouldn't look out the window, but he kept turning his light on and off like he wanted someone to see. That light could have been a flashlight or a flash from the Polaroid camera. Either way, Walter had seen something happening in that warehouse. But the last line of the entry was the most chilling. Quote, he saw me at the window. I'm sure of it. So the undeveloped camera was taken to the state lab, and when processed, the photos revealed blurry shots of the warehouse taken from Walter's window, several indistinct night images, and one photo nearly black except for a small shape of a white light. Wasn't enough to identify anyone, but it was enough to support one conclusion. Walter had tried to document what he witnessed. Ellison later learned from the town records and interviews that Walter had been terrified for years. He believed the man he saw would come back. He boarded up his windows for a time. He never attended town events, and he lived like someone who expected a knock at the door every night. Once the stroke took his speech, the truth stayed locked inside his mind. Walter Kinley didn't hide the truth out of malice, he hid out of fear, and it was a fear that didn't die after he lost the ability to speak. His box, his notebook, and his trembling reaction when Jacob's name was spoken all pointed to one unmistakable conclusion. Someone was in that warehouse the night Jacob died, someone holding a light, someone staging and photographing the scene, someone who noticed when a neighbor was watching. Walter Kinley never told the town what he saw, but he left enough behind to prove one thing. The killer wasn't finished with the story. Not in 1999, not in 2021, not yet. With Walter Kinley's notebook and his undeveloped camera confirming that someone was inside the warehouse on the night Jacob died, Detective Ellison needed to understand how that person moved around unnoticed. So he did something no one had thought to do in 1999. He tracked down the original architectural blueprints for the Briar Ridge Textile Warehouse. They were in the county archives, rolled, faded, and tied with twine, and the documents were dated back to 1947, the year the warehouse was built. Ellison carefully unrolled the sheets on a drafting table, and he noticed something immediately. The layout didn't match what police had described in 1999. The blueprint for the south wing, the wing where Jacob's body was found, showed a narrow corridor running behind the concrete pillars. But that corridor was never mentioned in the crime scene photographs. It wasn't in any photos, and it wasn't noted in any officer statement, and it wasn't referenced in the demolition plans from 2011. It simply didn't exist until it did. The corridor itself connected a former maintenance room, an emergency exit, and a small elevated catwalk that overlooked the warehouse floor. In other words, this was the perfect vantage point. Someone standing on that catwalk could watch nearly the entire warehouse without ever being seen from below. Construction renovations in the 90s appeared to have sealed the corridor's entrances. Drywall was added over door frames, storage shelving placed in front of access points, and over time it blended seamlessly into the building. To a responding officer standing in the main floor area, it would have looked like a simple solid wall. But to someone who knew the building well or someone who had time to explore, the corridor was an invisible highway. In the margin of the blueprint, written in shorthand pencil, was a faint annotation next to the catwalk, said, quote, view hatch, removed before final inspection. The hatch wasn't removed, instead it was covered and forgotten. But if the killer knew about that hatch, if they had access to the hidden corridor, they could have watched Jacob enter, turned the lights on and off, moved around above officers, and slipped out an emergency exit before police secured the building. Most importantly, they could have staged the photographs without ever touching the same ground the officers later searched. So Ellison then sketched out a hypothetical timeline based on the blueprints. The killer enters the warehouse before Jacob. They wait in the hidden corridor. After the murder, the killer moves Jacob's body into position. They take the second Polaroid, the one with Jacob upright. The killer descends, repositions the body again, places the token, takes the first Polaroid. Hearing approaching officer, the killer retreats into the corridor and watches. They wait until the officers leave the building to secure the perimeter. The killer slips out the emergency exit that fed into the corridor sealed door. So for the first time, the staging made sense. The timing made sense and the Polaroids made sense, but now it had a new question. Who knew about the corridor?
Yeah.
Ellison tracked down members of the crew who demolished the warehouse in 2011, and one man, Earl Drummond, remembers finding, quote, a strange walled off space behind the south wing during cleanup. He said, quote, we joked that it felt like someone had lived in there at some point. Dust was different, like it had been disturbed more recently than the rest of the building. He never filed a report. He just assumed it was part of an old utility structure, But Ellison's stomach sank at this. If someone had accessed the quarter in the years leading up to 1999, and if they used it regularly, if they returned to it, it meant something sinister. The killer wasn't improvising, the killer was comfortable in that building. Records show that the textile plant once employed a night shift janitor named Clayton Mercer, who worked there from 1983 until the factory's closure in 1999. Mercer was solitary, quiet, deeply familiar with the building structure, and known to sleep there during double shifts. But in 95, Mercer left Briar Ridge. He simply packed his truck and disappeared. His last known address was a P.O. box in Kentucky. And when Ellison ran his name through modern databases, the result just sent a chill through him. Clayton Mercer had never filed a tax return, renewed a license, taken a job, or used a credit card after 1996. It's like he evaporated or went underground. Suddenly, the phrase from the second Polaroid description took on a darker meaning. Quote, first you see what he saw. If Jacob saw something hidden inside that corridor, if he saw someone who wasn't supposed to be there, if he saw Clayton Mercer, this might now explain everything. If Mercer was alive, he didn't want to be found. And if Mercer was dead, someone else had taken up his habits, his knowledge, and maybe even his rituals. Either possibility was bad. So Detective Ellison had seen cold cases revived by coincidence, by new technology, even confessions. But what he hadn't seen, what no one expected, was for a long abandoned warehouse to contain the key to a murder 2 decades old. The hidden quarter changed everything, and all paths now pointed towards one name, Clayton Mercer. Mercer had been a janitor at the textile plant for 11 years. He knew the building intimately, its vents, crawl spaces, its unfinished additions, its blind spots, its shortcuts. Workers described him as quiet, meticulous, and as comfortable being unseen. He often worked alone. He preferred the graveyard shift, and he was the only employee with keys to every room inside the entire facility. Then, after the plant closed in
And he
1990,
knew how to get into that secret passageway,
right.
presumably. Yeah. Okay.
After the plant closed in 1994, Mercer stayed in town another year and then he vanished. So Ellison began constructing a psychological profile based on what he knew about Mercer. Solitary lifestyle, lived alone, no close family, no partners, no social ties. He had comfort in confined spaces. Workers reported he often napped in maintenance closets. His attachment to the warehouse, he stayed late, returned on off hours, and was seen entering the building even after it shut down. Possible voyeuristic tendencies. A rumor from the early 90s noted he watched workers from the catwalk above, and then disappearance without explanation. No forwarding address, no job application trail, no digital footprint. But the most compelling connection wasn't behavioral, it was symbolic. The wooden token found in the Polaroid matched carvings attributed to Harlan Pike, the early 20th century craftsman whose work had seeped into the folklore. Why would Mercer possess Pike's carving style? Ellison wondered this exact same thing until he found a line in an old newspaper archive suggesting that Pike's tools, journals, and token patterns had remained in the possession of the Pike family until the 1950s when they were purchased at an estate sale. The buyer listed only as C. Mercer. No relation was ever confirmed, but Briar Ridge was not a large town, and the Pike estate had occurred just 4 blocks from the house where Clayton Mercer was born. This was the moment Ellison's working theory began to take shape. If Mercer acquired Park carvings, he may have resurfaced the symbol for reasons only known to him, and Jacob Rainier may have stumbled onto something Mercer did not want discovered. So Ellison reconstructed the possibilities. Jacob entered the warehouse willingly, possibly following someone he trusted. Mercer, comfortable in hidden quarters, observed him. A confrontation occurred, quick, quiet, and unobserved. Mercer staged the scene twice, once upright, chalk symbol intact, once with the token in Jacob's hand. He photographed both. He removed the token and erased the inscription, and then he escaped through the corridor minutes before police arrived. But then comes the odd part of everything. Why wait 22 years to reveal the photos? If Mercer was dead, someone else wanted the images seen. If Mercer was alive, he wanted the case reopened. Ellison pursued every lead. He ran Mercer's name through the National Missing Persons Database, NamUs. He checked death records under alternate spellings. He searched counties across Tennessee, Kentucky, and Georgia. He spoke with former co-workers. He tracked down the landlord of Mercer's last known residence. He reviewed archived bills, registrations, and state tax records. But it was like chasing a ghost. The few people who remembered Mercer all said the same thing. He kept to himself. He was strange but harmless. He didn't talk much. He was there until one day he wasn't. There was no evidence Mercer committed a crime. No one ever saw Mercer express violence, and there are no arrests or incident reports connecting him to suspicious behavior, but absence itself becomes suspicious. One breakthrough came when Ellison requested access to Mercer's childhood home, now owned by a distant cousin, and in the basement, in a wooden crate labeled tools, Ellison found rusted carving instruments, a box of unfinished wooden discs, sandpaper worn down to shreds, and one token, the same symbol carved faintly into its surface. Wasn't proof of murder, but it was proof Mercer had both the skills and tools to create what appeared in the Polaroid. Ellison didn't have a confession, he didn't have forensic evidence, but he had a narrative fit too well to ignore. Mercer inherited or collects Pike's carving tools. Mercer becomes attached to the symbol. Mercer spends years exploring the warehouse's hidden corridors. Jacob enters the warehouse in 99 and sees something involving Mercer. Jacob is killed quickly and quietly. Mercer stages and photographs the scene. Mercer removes all trace of the token in the inscription. Decades later, someone releases the photos, meaning Mercer is either gone or wants the story told. It all fit except for one thing big enough to break Ellison's entire theory apart. Mercer's social security number was used to apply for a job in Montana in 2008, 13 years after he supposedly vanished, and 5 years before the warehouse was torn down, which meant Mercer was alive after 1999. He may have returned to Briar Ridge. He could have planted the Polaroid in the time capsule. He might have even been the one who mailed the second Polaroid, and Mercer could be still alive today. But if all of that were true, why hadn't he been seen? Why had no one heard from him? Where had he gone after 2008? And what connection did he have to Jacob Rainier? Ellison thought at this point he was very close to the truth. However, what he didn't realize, he was heading straight into a dead end. And this is the kind of dead end that makes the detective question everything he thought he knew. Detective Ellison didn't chase ghosts, but Clayton Mercer had become impossible to ignore. The hidden corridor, the carving tools, the Polaroid
He
angles, and
was
Social
living in the
Security hit in
corridor.
Montana. Yeah, probably. Every
Yeah,
thread pointed towards a man who was either a killer or the keeper of a secret larger than a single murder, and all Ellison needed was one definitive lead. And in early October, he got one. It came in at 2:17 a.m., routed through an encrypted app that made tracing impossible. The voice was the same, low, modulated, almost mechanical, and this time it said more than a single sentence. Quote, you're looking for Mercer. You're close, but you won't find him. Look for the place where the symbol was first carved. That's where he left the last piece. Then the call ended. There was one more detail. This time the caller coughed before hanging up. It was a small, fragile breath that cracked under the strain. Ellison replayed this 5 times. Whoever the caller was, they weren't young and they didn't sound healthy, which meant the window to catch him before the truth died with them was closing.
the neighbor across the street.
So Ellison returned to historical archives. He pored over journals, land records, and probate inventories connected to Harlan Pike and early Briar Ridge settlers. It took him 3 days, but eventually he found it, a set of field notes from 1903 written by Pike himself. In the margins of one page was a rough version of the symbol, incomplete but unmistakable. Next to it, Pike wrote, cut into the beam at the Jensen place, means boundary, means warning. The Jensen property had burned down in the 1940s, but the foundation remained. There was a stone skeleton half swallowed by blackberry berry vines and kudzu on the outskirts of Briar Ridge. If the caller was telling the truth, Mercer might have left something there, something that would explain everything. Ellison went alone, and it was nearly sunset when he parked his car at the edge of the unmaintained road and hiked into the thicket. The runes appeared gradually, first the chimney, then the outline of the stone foundation, and then he saw it, a wooden beam, blackened by fire but still intact, lying partially buried beneath tangled brush. Etched into it, faint but legible, was the symbol. This was the place. Someone had been there recently. The brush had been cleared and the vines cut back. There was an impression in the dirt that suggested a person had knelt there. He pulled the beam aside and uncovered a small metal lockbox, which was rusted but intact. No note, no markings, but its placement was deliberate. Deliberate. Ellison carried the box back to his car and pried it open with a tire iron, and inside, wrapped in a piece of burlap, was a single Polaroid. This one showed the warehouse from the catwalk level looking down at Jacob's body before either of the first two Polaroids were taken. In this image, Jacob is alive, barely. His eyes were open and unfocused, his mouth slightly parted. He was lying on his back, not yet posed and not yet staged. If this was real, the Polaroids captured the final seconds of Jacob Rainier's life. That wasn't even the most disturbing part. The disturbing part was the shadow cast over him. It was a large silhouette leaning over Jacob, holding something small, round, and reflective, something that could have been a camera, a flashlight, or the token itself. The shape suggested broad shoulders, a heavy build, not an elderly man, not a frail man, but someone strong and someone deliberate. And that's when Ellison noticed something else. In the lower right corner of the Polaroid, the very tip of a boot is visible, a modern boot with a distinct tread pattern, a tread that didn't exist in 1999. Then the implication slammed him. This Polaroid wasn't taken in 1999. It was staged later, deliberately mimicking the original murder scene, and someone had forged the third image to mislead the investigation. This box wasn't a clue, but it was a trap, a diversion, and a dead end. Ellison returned to the ruins the next day with a team, and the beam was gone. Every trace of disturbed brush had been raked smooth. Someone had followed him and had cleaned up. Someone wanted the false lead to disappear the moment it served its purpose. The caller never contacted Ellison again. Mercer was never found. No additional Polaroids surfaced. And just like that, the case collapsed back into the fog. A decades old murder stoked back to life by anonymous photos and muddied by fabricated evidence and a witness who could no longer speak. Every trail led to someone who was either dead, missing, or actively manipulating the investigation. For the first time since the Polaroid surfaced in the time capsule, Ellison felt genuinely defeated. He had followed the clues to their end, and all they had done was lead him in a circle, a perfect circle, just like the carved token. So after weeks of digging, after old photos, hidden symbols, mysterious phone calls, and a trail that wound from a burned out farmhouse to a demolished warehouse, Detective Ellison reached the only conclusion he could, a conclusion that might sound familiar to any of you longtime listeners. Sometimes the case refuses to be solved. Sometimes the answers die with the people who carried them. Sometimes a town clings to its mysteries harder than it clings to its history. And in Briar Ridge, Tennessee, the truth about what happened to Jacob Rainier may never be known. Now, if you're sitting there right now with your headphones in, maybe you're on your morning commute, you're washing dishes, maybe you're hiding from your coworkers in the bathroom, you're thinking, man, this story has everything. Old symbols, Polaroids, hidden rooms, creepy witness, folklore, a missing janitor. This feels like a Netflix doc waiting to happen. Well, there's a reason for that because because none of this ever happened. Not
What?
Jacob Rainier, not the Polaroids, not the time capsule, not the witness in the nursing home, not the hidden quarter, not the mysterious phone calls, not the wooden token, not Clayton Mercer, not Detective Ellison, not the Tower of Briar Ridge, every detail, every clue, every dead end, every carefully placed piece of symbolism was made up by me for you. Because today's murdery story, this haunting little tale of unsolved tragedy, small town secrets, and a killer who staged crime scenes like art installations, yeah, this was your early April Fool's Day episode.
Because it's April Fool's. You're a dick. That was kind of lovely. Thank
Now,
you for that.
before Zig starts threatening me with physical violence on air, let me just say I love you all. I love true crime. I love telling these stories, but sometimes you got to break the pattern just a little. And
Yeah, no, no, this is
what
great.
better way to mess with the murdery side of
Okay,
the house?
since you wrote the story, who was the killer?
I don't know.
You didn't finish the fucking story?
Oh,
God damn it.
what better way to mess with the murdery side of the house than creating the most detailed, most atmospheric, most believable true crime case I've ever presented, and then revealing it was completely fabricated. Every
This
interview fake, every Polaroid fake, every clue fake, every creepy line of witness dialogue totally fake. The warehouse blueprint fake. This whole thing was built from scratch by me as a love letter to the genre and as a practical joke on Zig, our listeners, and yes, even you. But hey, you know what? If you were sucked in, if you Googled something trying to find a real case, if you thought, wow, how have I
I'm
never
looking
heard of this?
up Greenbrier, Tennessee. I'm like, man,
Briar Ridge.
Briar
If
Ridge.
you go, wow, how have I never heard of this one? If your brain kept telling you the story felt familiar, but you just couldn't place it, then the joke worked.
Uh-huh.
Happy early April Fool's Day from Nerdery and Murdering. Next week, I'll go back to real murderers, but today we solved and immediately unsolved the darkest crime that never existed. April Fool's Day.
Thank you, sir.
Do you know how long I have wanted to record this episode?
How
Ah,
long has this one been in your wheelhouse?
a long time,
Years?
a long time. I wrote this a very long time ago. Um, if you like the way this is written, Go pick up prime numbers. I wrote this. I wrote that just like I wrote this. I wrote every
Yes.
detail of this. Again, it was a love letter to the genre of murdery. I'm sorry that I didn't give you a real murdery this week, but when I saw that this episode releases the Sunday before April Fool's Day, I went, this is my moment. This is my time. I'm doing this
Perfect.
episode.
That's beautiful.
I was watching your expression as you went through this, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here?
Kind of like if you don't listen to Johnny Cash, fuck you.
Ah, thank you, dear listeners, for sticking through that. I know this was a super long episode, and I hope you don't hate me for this. I hope you were fooled. I hope you found this a very appropriate April Fool's Day joke, and I'm really sorry I didn't bring you a real true crime case, but I've been wanting to do this for a long time. So there you go. I got you, didn't I? He can't breathe. Here's what I'm waiting for now. We have certain listeners that will ping me as they're listening to episodes. I can't wait to get the messages from those people when they get to the end of this. I can't
I'm a
wait.
bitch.
I promise next week I'll be back to real true crime. I promise it won't
Oh,
be made up next week.
oh, Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for
Um,
that. That was so fucking funny.
Thank you for taking that journey with me, and hopefully you enjoyed that.
Enjoyed the shit out of that. Thank you, sir.
Ah.
I was making notes.
Well, okay. So let me go back and let me go back and give you and give you the clue. I said at the very beginning, because by the time we reach the end of the story, your understanding of what happened is going to shift more than once. And when it does, you'll realize this case isn't just dark. It was designed to mess with you.
You did say that. The case was designed to mess with you. Okay. Yeah, all right. That's fair. You did say that.
I gave a small clue. I gave a very small clue. And in the blurb for the episode, because I've already written that, I wrote down what begins as a mysterious murder unfolds into something far more layered, unsettling, and strange than it first appears. This is not a passive listen. Details matter, threads overlap, and nothing is quite what it seems. You might want to even take notes.
Yeah, I'm just gonna for the YouTube, I'm just gonna call it and the strange tale of Jacob Rainier
The time capsule case.
time capsule case. There you
Yes.
go.
Yes, that's what I called it. That's what I called it.
Very
Thank
nice.
you, dear listeners. Thank you for staying through on this. Like I said, I know it was long, and I hope you enjoyed your April Fool's joke. I hope I fooled you. I'm sure there are some out there that are going to go, he's full of shit. This ain't real. But I think there's enough in there that'll make them go,
Huh.
maybe. I don't know. But that will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more about us on Nerdery Murdery. That's our nerdyrymurdery.com. That's our hub. That's our website. You'll find more information about our show. Plus, you will find the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often update.
Yeah, definitely check this one out. Like we said before, when you follow these music ones, go to the YouTube playlist, go to the bottom, play the show. When we get to the song, pause it, go up to the top, listen to the song. It's just a better way to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate all the work you do on that.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
You can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your nerdy or murdy, please do purchase something from there because you know what? You look good in it.
Yeah, you do.
You can also find the link to our Patreon if you wish to become a patron and help with the costs that are associated with the show. That, along with our merchandise, do help with our storage, with our uploads, with our website, everything that's associated with the show. It's not with this show. It's not cheap. It does cost, and we do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
The other thing you can do that is completely free for you, and believe me, it helps more than you know. Please leave a 5-star review wherever you can. If you like our show, if you like what I hear, please what you hear, please leave that review. It helps us. It helps the algorithms and helps other people find the content that may be looking for the information that we talk about. Please and thank you again. And last but certainly not least, to our good friend Chuck. Better not have fallen asleep to this one, but you can go to sleep now.
Good night, Chuck.
Good night, Chuck. With that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.